Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching the sleek Zephyrian transport ship dock with their medical station. The alien vessel gleamed like liquid mercury under the harsh lights of the docking bay, its smooth curves reflecting the sterile environment of Sanctuary Station. As the chief veterinary officer aboard humanity's first interspecies medical facility, Sarah had seen dozens of alien species come through their doors. But the Zephyrians always made her nervous. They were tall, elegant beings with translucent skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns when they communicated. Their society valued perfection above all else, and they had little patience for weakness or inefficiency. Today's visit was supposed to be routine, a diplomatic health inspection to maintain their treaty with the Galactic Medical Council. The airlock hissed open, and 3 Zephyrians glided into the station. Their leader, Ambassador Kethvar, moved with fluid grace, his skin pulsing with formal greeting patterns. Behind him followed 2 subordinates, their own skin displaying submissive blue spirals. "Dr. Chen," Kethvar's voice resonated through his translation device, creating an oddly melodic tone. "We require immediate departure. Our inspection is complete." Sarah frowned. They had arrived only 6 hours ago, barely enough time for a proper medical review. "Ambassador, surely you'd like to see our new xenobiology lab. We've made significant advances in cross-species treatment protocols." The alien's skin flashed irritated orange streaks. "Unnecessary. We have seen enough of your primitive methods." As the Zephyrians moved toward their ship, Sarah noticed something odd. One of the subordinates kept glancing back at their vessel, his skin displaying what she had learned to recognize as distress patterns, rapid purple pulses mixed with erratic white flashes. "Wait!" Sarah called out, but the airlock was already sealing. Through the observation window, she watched their ship prepare for departure. That's when she saw it, a blur of movement near the docking clamps. Something small and dark had been left behind, crouched in the shadows of the docking bay. The Zephyrian ship disengaged with cold efficiency, its engines casting blue fire as it accelerated away from the station. Sarah grabbed her emergency kit and rushed to the docking bay, her heart pounding. The bay's atmosphere was already cycling back to normal pressure, but the creature she had spotted was still there, huddled against a support beam. It was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, yet strangely familiar. About the size of a large house cat, the creature had 6 legs ending in retractable claws, and fur that seemed to shift color with its breathing. Its eyes were enormous, taking up nearly a quarter of its triangular face, and they glowed with an inner light that pulsed weakly. The most striking feature was its tail, long and prehensile, with what appeared to be sensory organs along its length. The creature looked up at her approach, and Sarah's breath caught. Those eyes held intelligence, fear, and something that looked remarkably like hope. But what made her stomach lurch was the creature's obvious illness. Its breathing was labored, its fur patchy and dull. Dark lesions covered its skin, and when it tried to move toward her, it stumbled, clearly weak. "Hey there, little one," Sarah whispered, slowly extending her hand. The creature sniffed cautiously, then pressed its head against her palm. The gesture was so trusting, so desperate, that tears sprang to Sarah's eyes. She gently lifted the creature, surprised by how light it felt. It should have been heavier for its size, which suggested malnutrition or worse. As she carried it toward the medical bay, Sarah's mind raced. Why had the Zephyrians abandoned it? Their species was known for their logical approach to everything, but this seemed unnecessarily cruel. In the medical bay, Sarah's assistant, Dr. Marcus Webb, looked up from his research console. A former military medic turned xenobiologist, Marcus had seen his share of disturbing things, but his face darkened when he saw the creature in Sarah's arms. "Zephyrian?" he asked, already preparing an examination table. "Left behind," Sarah said grimly, placing the creature down carefully. "And in bad shape." The creature didn't resist as they began their examination, which worried Sarah more than if it had fought them. Sick animals usually either flee or attack when handled by strangers. This level of docility suggested severe illness or learned helplessness. Marcus ran his scanner over the creature's body, his expression growing more troubled with each reading. "Sarah, these aren't just surface wounds. The scanner's picking up some kind of parasitic infection. Multiple species, from what I can tell." Sarah peered at the readings. Her stomach dropped as she recognized some of the patterns. "Neural parasites. And these readings here, are those reproductive cysts?" "Looks like it. And see these inflammation markers? The infection's been going on for months, maybe longer." The creature whimpered softly, a sound that was heartbreaking in its resignation. Sarah stroked its head gently, feeling the heat of fever under her palm. "Why wouldn't they treat this?" Marcus asked, voicing what Sarah was thinking. "The Zephyrians have advanced medical technology. They could have easily dealt with parasites." Sarah's jaw clenched as understanding dawned, because it wasn't cost-effective. "Look at the scarring patterns, Marcus. This isn't neglect. It's abandonment." They knew exactly what was happening and chose not to treat it. She pulled up the Zephyrian cultural database on her tablet, scrolling through information about their social structure. What she found made her blood boil. "Here," she said, pointing to a section about Zephyrian companion animals. "They call them symbiotic productivity enhancers. Basically, emotional support animals that also serve practical functions. But look at this clause. Once the animal becomes a resource drain, it's considered socially acceptable to dispose of it." Marcus shook his head in disgust. "So, when it got sick, they dumped it the first chance they got. Probably thought leaving it on our medical station was the most humane option." Sarah's voice dripped with sarcasm. The creature's breathing grew more labored, and its internal light dimmed further. Time was running out. "Can we help it?" Marcus asked quietly. Sarah looked at the scan results again. The parasite load was massive, the neural damage extensive. By any logical medical standard, the humane thing would be euthanasia. But something about the creature's eyes, the way it had trusted her immediately despite obvious mistreatment, made her hesitate. The Galactic Medical Council has specific protocols about treating abandoned alien fauna, Marcus reminded her gently, especially when the prognosis is this poor. Sarah knew he was right. The protocols existed for good reason. Resources were limited, and they had to prioritize cases with reasonable chances of success. But as she looked at the creature, she remembered why she had become a veterinarian in the first place. It wasn't about protocols or success rates. It was about the bond between intelligent beings and the animals that trusted them. "What would the Zephyrians do?" she asked rhetorically. "Cut their losses," Marcus replied. "Then we do the opposite." Sarah's voice was firm. "Get me a full workup on these parasites. I want to know everything: life cycles, weaknesses, treatment options, and contact Dr. Rodriguez in the xenobiology lab. If anyone knows about cross-species parasite treatment, it's her." Marcus hesitated. "Sarah, the Resource Allocation Board will want justification. This could take weeks of intensive treatment, and there's no guarantee." "Then we don't tell them until we have to." Sarah was already pulling up treatment protocols. This station was built on the principle that all sapient life has value. That extends to the companions of sapient beings. The creature looked up at her, and for a moment its eyes seemed to brighten slightly. Sarah could have sworn she saw something like gratitude in that alien gaze. Over the next several hours, Sarah and Marcus worked to stabilize their patient. They started with basic supportive care: IV fluids, pain management, and temperature regulation. The creature accepted treatment with remarkable patience, as if it understood they were trying to help. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived from the xenobiology lab, taking one look at the scan results and whistling low. "This is extensive," she said, highlighting various areas on the medical display. "I count at least 4 different parasitic species. 2 are affecting the nervous system, one's in the digestive tract, and this one here," she pointed to a cluster near the creature's spine, "appears to be some kind of reproductive parasite." "Reproductive?" Sarah asked. "It's using the host's body to incubate its offspring. Very nasty. The pain alone would be excruciating for a creature this size." Sarah felt her anger at the Zephyrians flare again. How could they have ignored such obvious suffering? "There's something else," Elena continued. "These parasites, they're not naturally occurring together. The combination suggests the creature was exposed to multiple contaminated environments over time." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. Elena pulled up a genetic analysis. "It means this little one has been sick for a very long time and has been moved between different infected areas. The Zephyrians didn't just abandon a sick animal. They abandoned an animal they've been systematically neglecting for possibly years." The creature whimpered again, and Sarah's resolve hardened. "Then we give it what they never did. Proper care." As the station's night cycle began, Sarah found herself alone with the creature. Marcus had gone to get some rest, and Elena was analyzing parasite samples in her lab. The creature was sleeping fitfully, its breathing still labored but slightly more stable than when they had found it. Sarah pulled up a chair beside the examination table, studying her patient. In the soft light of the medical bay, she could see details she had missed before. The creature's fur, where it wasn't damaged by parasites, showed beautiful iridescent patterns. Its paws had intricate pad structures that suggested both climbing ability and fine manipulation. This was clearly an intelligent species, possibly even semi-sapient itself. "What did they call you?" she whispered. "Did you even have a name?" The creature's eyes opened at the sound of her voice, focusing on her with surprising clarity. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the species divide. Then the creature did something unexpected. It reached out with one paw and gently touched Sarah's hand. The gesture was so human-like, so deliberately communicative, that Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes again. "You understand, don't you? You know we're trying to help." The creature's tail moved slightly, wrapping around her wrist in what could only be described as a hug. It was such a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes about the creature's intelligence and capacity for emotional connection. That's when Sarah made her decision. She wasn't just going to try to save this creature, she was going to give it the life it deserved. The Zephyrians had treated it as a disposable object, but humans understood something they apparently didn't. That the measure of a civilization isn't how it treats its strongest members, but how it cares for its most vulnerable. The comm system chimed, indicating an incoming message. Sarah checked the display and saw it was from the Medical Council's Oversight Committee. "Dr. Chen," the message began, "we have received a complaint from the Zephyrian Embassy regarding unauthorized retention of abandoned property. Please dispose of the biological matter according to standard protocols and submit your compliance report by Aero 800 station time." Sarah stared at the message in disbelief. Biological matter. They were calling her patient biological matter. She deleted the message without responding and turned back to the creature. "Don't worry, little one. You're not biological matter. You're not property. And you're definitely not abandoned anymore." As she settled in for a long night of monitoring, Sarah began planning. The parasites could be treated, she was sure of it. It would take time, resources, and probably some creative interpretation of medical protocols. But it could be done. The bigger challenge would be protecting the creature from the political fallout. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, she would simply be what the Zephyrians had never bothered to be. A caregiver who saw value in vulnerable life. The creature's breathing grew deeper and more regular as the medication took effect. For the first time since they had found it, It seemed to be truly resting. Sarah allowed herself a small smile of hope. This was just the beginning, but it was a good beginning. Outside the medical bay's viewport, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small drama playing out in the sterile corridors of Sanctuary Station. But in one small corner of the galaxy, the actions of one human medic were about to prove that sometimes the smallest gestures of compassion can have the biggest impact. The creature slept on, unaware that its life had just changed forever. In its dreams, perhaps it still remembered the casual cruelty of its former masters. But when it woke, it would begin to learn what it meant to be truly cared for. Sarah checked her watch. In 6 hours, she would have to face the medical council's demands. But she had 6 hours to prepare her defense, 6 hours to document every reason why this creature deserved to live. It would have to be enough. Sarah woke to the sound of alarms. She had dozed off in the chair beside the examination table, her neck stiff from the awkward position. The creature was awake, its eyes wide with fear as the medical bay's emergency lights flashed red. "What's happening?" Marcus burst through the door, his hair disheveled from sleep. Sarah checked the creature's vitals on the monitor. "False alarm," she said, shutting off the warning system. The parasites caused some kind of neurological event. Its brain activity spiked and triggered the seizure alert. The creature was trembling, clearly distressed by the noise and lights. Sarah gently stroked its head, making soft, shushing sounds. Gradually, the trembling subsided, and the creature pressed closer to her touch. "How's it doing overall?" Marcus asked, reviewing the night's readings. "Better than expected, actually. The fever broke around 3 hours ago, and its breathing has improved. But look at these parasite readings." Marcus studied the display, his expression growing troubled. "They're multiplying faster than we anticipated. And this neural activity... Sarah, I think the parasites are affecting its brain function more severely than we thought." Before Sarah could respond, the medical bay doors slammed open. Commander Harrison, the station's administrative officer, strode in with 3 security personnel behind him. His face was red with anger, and he clutched a data pad like a weapon. "Dr. Chen!" His voice boomed through the small space, causing the creature to shrink back in fear. "You have 30 minutes to terminate the unauthorized patient and file your disposal report." Sarah stood slowly, placing herself between Harrison and the examination table. "This is a medical bay, Commander. I'll ask you to lower your voice. Don't lecture me about protocol, Doctor. The Zephyrian Embassy has filed a formal complaint. Apparently, you've stolen their property." "Property?" Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. "This is a living, sentient being that they abandoned to die. If anything, they've committed animal cruelty." Commander Harrison laughed harshly. "Animal cruelty? It's not even from our planet. Your job is to treat humans and our allies, not every stray creature that wanders onto the station." The creature whimpered at the raised voices, and Sarah's protective instincts flared. "My job is to preserve life. All life." "Your job," Harrison said, stepping closer, "is to follow orders. The medical council has reviewed the case, and their decision is final. The creature represents a contamination risk and a waste of resources." Marcus moved to stand beside Sarah. "Commander, with respect, we haven't even completed our initial assessment. It's premature to make any decisions about treatment. The decision has been made." Harrison gestured to the security team. "Remove the animal and dispose of it according to hazmat protocols." "No." Sarah's voice cut through the air like a blade. Harrison's face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Excuse me?" "I said no. This creature is under my medical care, and I won't allow it to be euthanized without exhausting all treatment options. Dr. Chen, you are relieved of duty. Step away from the animal immediately." Sarah crossed her arms. Under Medical Council Regulation 47C, any physician has the right to refuse orders that contradict their medical judgment regarding patient welfare. I'm invoking that regulation, Harrison sputtered. That regulation applies to human patients. It applies to all patients under care at this facility, Marcus interjected. I helped write the medical protocols when this station was established. Dr. Chen is correct. The security team looked uncomfortable. None of them wanted to physically remove a doctor from her patient, especially when the legal situation was unclear. Harrison pulled out his communicator. Get me the Medical Council Oversight Committee, now. While they waited, Sarah turned back to the creature. It was watching the confrontation with obvious intelligence, its large eyes moving from person to person as if trying to understand the conflict. When Sarah reached toward it, the creature immediately nuzzled into her hand, seeking comfort. Look at this response, she said to Harrison. This isn't just an animal. It's forming emotional bonds, seeking reassurance. It understands that we're discussing its fate. Anthropomorphism, Harrison dismissed. You're projecting human emotions onto an alien creature. Dr. Rodriguez chose that moment to enter, carrying a datapad filled with research. She stopped short when she saw the security team, but Sarah waved her in. Elena, tell them what you found. Dr. Rodriguez glanced nervously at Commander Harrison, then cleared her throat. The parasitic analysis reveals something interesting. These organisms aren't naturally occurring. They're artificially modified. What does that mean? Harrison demanded. Someone created these parasites. They're biological weapons designed to cause maximum suffering while keeping the host alive. The pain receptors are specifically targeted, and there are neural pathways that have been altered to prevent natural pain suppression. The room fell silent. Even Harrison looked disturbed. You're saying someone tortured this creature deliberately? Marcus asked. Not someone. The Zephyrians. These parasites have genetic markers that match Zephyrian biotechnology. They've been using their own companion animals as test subjects for biological warfare research. Sarah felt sick. That's why they abandoned it here. They finished their experiments and dumped the evidence. Harrison's communicator crackled to life. Commander, this is Counselor Vex from the Medical Oversight Committee. We're prepared to support Dr. Chen's position regarding the alien patient. Harrison nearly dropped the communicator. What? But the Zephyrian complaint has been withdrawn, the voice continued. It seems the Zephyrian embassy is no longer interested in pursuing this matter. Very suddenly and very quietly. Dr. Chen has full authority to treat the patient as she sees fit. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. This was unexpected. Furthermore, Counselor Vex continued, the Medical Council is authorizing an investigation into Zephyrian medical practices. Dr. Rodriguez's findings suggest possible violations of the Galactic Convention on Biological Warfare. Harrison looked deflated. Understood, sir. I'll file an amended report. After the security team left, Sarah, Marcus, and Elena stood around the examination table in stunned silence. That was too easy, Marcus finally said. Why would the Zephyrians withdraw their complaint so quickly? Elena pulled up her research on her datapad. Because I sent a preliminary report to the Galactic Medical Council this morning. The parasite analysis doesn't just prove biological weapons research. It proves they're using sentient creatures as test subjects. Sentient? Sarah looked down at the creature with new understanding. The neural modifications aren't random. They're designed to enhance emotional processing and pain response in a creature that already shows signs of higher intelligence. This little one isn't just smart for an animal. It might actually be sapient. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. The Zephyrians hadn't just been experimenting on an animal. They had been torturing a sentient being. Can we prove sapience? She asked. Elena nodded. I'll need to run some tests, but the brain structure is promising. If we can establish sapience, this becomes a completely different case. We'd be looking at crimes against sentient life. Over the next several hours, they worked to stabilize the creature while Elena prepared her sapience tests. Sarah noticed that her patient seemed to understand that something had changed. It was more alert, more responsive, as if sensing that it was no longer in immediate danger. "What should we call it?" Marcus asked as they reviewed treatment options. "We can't keep saying the creature if it's potentially sapient." Sarah looked at their patient thoughtfully. The name had to be right, something that honored what this being had survived. "Phoenix," she said finally. "Rising from the ashes." Elena looked up from her tests. "Phoenix it is. And Sarah, the preliminary sapience results are positive. We're dealing with a fully intelligent being here." The implications hit them all at once. Phoenix wasn't just a victim of medical experimentation. It was a sentient being who had been tortured, abandoned, and left to die. But it had survived, and now it had advocates. "We need to document everything," Sarah said. "Phoenix's condition, the parasites, the evidence of deliberate modification. This isn't just a medical case anymore, it's evidence of war crimes." As they worked through the day, Sarah noticed Phoenix growing stronger. The anti-parasitic treatments were beginning to work, and its natural intelligence was becoming more apparent. It watched their activities with obvious interest, and when Elena brought out testing equipment, Phoenix seemed to understand that it was being evaluated. The sapience tests were remarkable. Phoenix could solve complex puzzles, demonstrated tool use, and showed clear evidence of abstract thinking. Most importantly, it displayed empathy, trying to comfort Sarah when she appeared stressed and showing concern for other patients in the medical bay. "There's no question," Elena announced after reviewing the final results. "Phoenix is not just sapient, it's probably more intelligent than many species we consider fully civilized." Sarah felt a mixture of triumph and rage. Triumph that Phoenix was officially recognized as a person, not property. Rage at what the Zephyrians had done to such a remarkable being. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Before anyone could answer, the medical bay doors opened again. But this time, instead of Commander Harrison, a tall figure in Galactic Council robes entered. Counselor Vex herself had come to the station. "Dr. Chen," the elderly Altarian said, her crystalline features reflecting the medical bay's lights, "I came to see this Phoenix for myself." Phoenix looked up at the newcomer with curious eyes, showing no fear despite having every reason to distrust aliens after its treatment by the Zephyrians. Counselor Vex approached slowly, her movements careful and non-threatening. "Hello, Phoenix. I am here to help." To everyone's amazement, Phoenix extended one paw toward the counselor. It was a gesture of trust that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. "Remarkable," Counselor Vex murmured. "After everything this being has endured, it still chooses to trust." She turned to Sarah. "Dr. Chen, the Council has decided to grant Phoenix full protections under the Sapient Rights Charter. The Zephyrians will face charges for biological warfare and crimes against sapient life." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "And Phoenix's future?" "That," Counselor Vex smiled, "will be up to Phoenix to decide. But I suspect it will want to stay with the person who chose to save its life when no one else would." As if understanding the conversation, Phoenix moved closer to Sarah, wrapping its tail around her wrist in that gesture she had come to recognize as affection. "The parasites will take time to fully clear," Dr. Rodriguez reported, "but Phoenix is strong. The prognosis is excellent." Sarah looked down at her patient, her friend, and smiled. "Hear that, Phoenix? You're going to be just fine." Phoenix's eyes brightened with what Sarah now knew was intelligence, understanding, and hope. The little being that the Zephyrians had tried to discard as biological waste had not only survived, but had exposed their crimes in the process. It was, Sarah realized, the most human thing of all, refusing to accept that any thinking, feeling being was disposable. In saving Phoenix, they had saved more than one life. They had upheld the principle that every sapient being had inherent worth. The Zephyrians had learned to calculate the value of life in terms of resources and utility. But humans understood something they didn't, that true civilization was measured by how you treated those who couldn't protect themselves. Phoenix curled up on the examination table, finally truly relaxed for the first time since they had found it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they worked to fully heal the damage caused by months of torture and neglect. But tonight, Phoenix could rest, knowing it was safe, valued, and loved. Sarah settled into her chair for another night of monitoring, but this time she wasn't worried. Phoenix was going to be more than fine. It was going to thrive. 6 months after Phoenix's arrival at Sanctuary Station, Sarah barely recognized the vibrant being that now served as her research partner. The skeletal, dying creature they had found in the docking bay had transformed into something magnificent. Phoenix's fur had regrown in brilliant patterns that shifted from deep blue to silver depending on its mood. Its eyes, once dim with pain, now sparkled with intelligence and mischief. Most remarkably, it had learned to communicate through a combination of gestures, vocalizations, and a modified translation device that Elena had developed specifically for Phoenix's unique neural patterns. "Good morning, Sarah." Phoenix's translated voice came through the speaker as she entered the xenobiology lab. The artificial voice was pleasant but couldn't quite capture the musical quality of Phoenix's natural sounds. "Good morning, Phoenix. Ready for today's presentation?" Phoenix's tail twitched with excitement. A gesture Sarah had learned indicated anticipation. Today, they would be addressing the Galactic Medical Council about their joint research into cross-species empathy and its medical applications. The work had grown naturally from their relationship. As Phoenix recovered, it had shown remarkable insight into the emotional states of other patients in the medical bay. More than insight, Phoenix could somehow sense pain and distress across species barriers and had an uncanny ability to provide comfort. What had started as casual observations had evolved into groundbreaking research. "The data analysis is complete," Phoenix announced, manipulating the holographic display with practiced precision. Its 6-limbed coordination allowed it to work with complex 3D interfaces in ways that impressed even the station's best technicians. Sarah reviewed their findings one more time. Over the past months, they had documented Phoenix's interactions with over 200 patients from 37 different species. In every case, Phoenix had demonstrated not only the ability to recognize distress, but also to provide species-appropriate comfort responses. A being that had never encountered Centaurian culture somehow knew that gentle pressure on their shoulder plates reduced anxiety. It instinctively understood that Rigelian patients needed to maintain visual contact during treatment to feel secure. "How do you do it?" Sarah asked, not for the first time. Phoenix's response came through a combination of spoken words and gesture. "Pain sounds the same in every language. Fear has the same rhythm across all hearts. I listen beneath the surface noise." It was the kind of profound statement that had made Phoenix something of a celebrity in xenobiological circles. The being that the Zephyrians had dismissed as disposable property was rewriting the understanding of interspecies empathy. Marcus entered the lab carrying a data pad and wearing a satisfied expression. "The Zephyrian trial verdict just came in. Guilty on all counts. The entire biological weapons program has been shut down, and they're being forced to pay reparations to Phoenix and the families of other test subjects." Sarah felt a grim satisfaction. The trial had revealed the scope of Zephyrian crimes. Phoenix had been just one of hundreds of sentient beings subjected to biological weapons testing. The evidence Phoenix's case had provided led to the liberation of dozens of other victims and the prosecution of those responsible. What about the other survivors? Phoenix asked, its tone carefully neutral. Sarah knew that Phoenix struggled with guilt about those who hadn't been as fortunate. The rehabilitation program is going well, Marcus replied gently. 3 more have been declared fully recovered, and the others are making progress. Your treatment protocols are being used as the standard for all cases. Phoenix's response was a complex trill that the translator couldn't capture. Sarah had learned to recognize it as a sound of mixed relief and lingering sadness. The comm system chimed with an incoming priority message. Sarah accepted the call, and Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the screen. The Admiral had become something of a mentor to Sarah since the Phoenix case began. Dr. Chen, I have news that I think you'll find interesting. The Galactic Council has approved funding for the Phoenix Protocol. Sarah's eyes widened. The Phoenix Protocol was their proposed program to train individuals like Phoenix as medical empathy specialists, bridging the gap between species and healthcare settings. Furthermore, the Admiral continued, they're establishing the Phoenix Institute at Sanctuary Station, with you as director and Phoenix as head of interspecies empathy research. Sarah felt tears of joy spring to her eyes. It meant permanent funding, resources to help more beings like Phoenix, and official recognition of what they had discovered together. There's more, Admiral Rodriguez added with a smile. The Altarian Medical Academy wants to grant Phoenix an honorary doctorate in xenopsychology. It would make Phoenix the first non-human member of their faculty. Phoenix's fur shimmered through the full spectrum of colors, a sign of overwhelming emotion. I am honored, it finally managed to say. After the call ended, Sarah, Marcus, and Phoenix sat in comfortable silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had accomplished. From a dying animal abandoned in a docking bay to a renowned researcher changing the face of interspecies medicine, it was more than any of them could have imagined 6 months ago. Phoenix, Sarah said eventually, you've exceeded every expectation. You've proven that intelligence and empathy can exist in forms we never anticipated. Phoenix's response was characteristically thoughtful. I had teachers who saw worth where others saw only waste. The Zephyrians taught me about cruelty, but humans taught me about compassion. Both lessons were necessary to become who I am now. As they prepared for their presentation to the Galactic Medical Council, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. The medical bay that had once been just a treatment facility was now a research center, a refuge for beings that others had given up on, and a symbol of hope for countless species. The presentation itself was a triumph. Phoenix's natural charisma, combined with their solid research, won over even the most skeptical council members. Species that had been at odds for decades found common ground in their shared recognition of Phoenix's work. During the question period, a Zephyrian delegate raised his hand. The room tensed. It was the first time a Zephyrian had participated in any council session since the trial. Dr. Chen Phoenix, the delegate began, his skin patterns showing deep shame. On behalf of my people, I offer our apologies. We were wrong. Our actions were inexcusable, and we hope that someday we might be worthy of forgiveness. Phoenix studied the Zephyrian for a long moment. Forgiveness is not mine to give or withhold, but understanding that I can offer. Your people valued efficiency over empathy. Mine suffered because of it, but suffering ends when learning begins. The Zephyrian's skin patterns shifted to gratitude, and he bowed deeply. After the session, Sarah and Phoenix walked to their favorite observation deck, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed cold and distant, but full of possibility. What's next? Sarah asked. Phoenix's tail curled around her wrist in their familiar gesture of affection. We keep healing. We keep learning. We keep proving that every life has value, no matter how small or strange it might seem to others. A year later, the Phoenix Institute was home to over 50 researchers from 20 different species, all working together to advance the understanding of interspecies empathy and medical care. Phoenix had become not just a researcher, but a teacher, training other empathic beings to serve as bridges between species. The walls of Sarah's office were covered with letters and messages from beings across the galaxy whose lives had been touched by Phoenix's work. Former test subjects who had found new purpose, medical professionals who had learned to see their patients in new ways, and families who had been reunited with loved ones they had thought were lost forever. But the most treasured item in her office was a simple photo. Phoenix curled up on the examination table during those first difficult days, looking up at Sarah with eyes full of pain, but also hope. It served as a reminder of how far they had come and why their work mattered. "Dr. Chen," Phoenix's voice came through the intercom. "The new group of rescues has arrived from the Kepler system. Shall we begin their assessment?" Sarah smiled, standing and straightening her medical coat. There was always more work to be done, more lives to save, more proof to offer that the value of life couldn't be calculated in terms of utility or convenience. "On my way, Phoenix." As she walked toward the medical bay, Sarah thought about the letter she had received that morning from a young medical student on Earth. The student had written about being inspired by Phoenix's story to pursue xenobiology, wanting to make a difference in the lives of beings that others might overlook. That was perhaps the greatest victory of all. Phoenix's story was spreading, inspiring others to look beyond the surface, to see value in the vulnerable, and to choose compassion over convenience. The Zephyrians had tried to dispose of biological waste, but humans had found a teacher, a friend, and a reminder of everything that made civilization worth having. In the medical bay, a new group of rescued beings awaited evaluation. Some were injured, some were sick, and all were afraid. But they were no longer alone. They had Phoenix, who understood their pain because it had survived its own, and Sarah, who had learned that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from looking at the stars, but from looking into the eyes of those who need help. The work continued, one life at a time, one moment of compassion at a time, proving over and over that no being was ever truly worthless. They just needed someone willing to see their worth. Phoenix moved among the new arrivals with gentle grace, offering comfort and hope, and Sarah watched with pride, knowing that they had built something that would outlast them both, a legacy of empathy in a galaxy that too often forgot the value of kindness. The stars wheeled on in their eternal dance, but in one small corner of the universe, the warmth of compassion burned bright, a beacon for all those who believed that every life, no matter how small, mattered.